Not like Bruce, who is very warm and affectionate, to going the complete opposite of that was alarming.
Bruce Willis, the man who made pain look powerful. The bartender who became Hollywood's indestructible hero. From the cracked streets of New Jersey to the silver screens of the world, he built a $250 million empire with sweat, scars, and silence.
Exclusive. Actor Bruce Willis's family was in South Jersey today for a special groundbreaking. The land where the Willis family and their cousins grew up has been donated to Habitat for Humanity.
But now, the legend who once defied death on screen faces a real-life battle that no script could prepare him for. His voice may have faded, yet his legacy echoes louder than ever. What did Bruce Willis leave behind? And why did it bring his family to tears? From silence to spotlight. Every legend begins in the shadows. For Bruce Willis, those shadows stretched long before the fame, long before the explosions. Born in a tiny German town still recovering from war, his childhood was far from glamorous. His father, a soldier, carried invisible wounds. His mother, a bank teller, worked through exhaustion. When the family moved to New Jersey, the American dream was little more than a flicker. Their small home rattled every time a freight train roared by, as if the ground itself reminded them how unstable life could be. Bruce wasn't just shy, he was silent. A severe stutter strangled his words, turning every sentence into a battlefield. "It felt like my mouth was full of cement," he once confessed. The laughter of classmates branded him with nicknames that stung for years. For a boy who couldn't speak, humiliation became routine. But where most would retreat, Bruce began to fight. Not with his fists, but with courage. At 17, everything changed. A trembling teenager walked onto a school stage for a drama performance, the spotlight burning hot, his heart hammering. Then, a miracle. The stutter vanished. The words came smooth, alive, electric. The stage, that fragile wooden platform, became his freedom. Acting didn't just give him a voice, it gave him purpose. He found in storytelling what he'd lost in silence: control. After high school, he studied drama at Montclair State University, but dropped out to chase his dream full-time in New York. There, he faced the kind of poverty that bruises the soul. He bartended through freezing nights, slept on friends' floors, skipped meals, and auditioned endlessly, only to be told no more times than he could count. Yet every rejection only sharpened his edge. He poured drinks at smoky bars, watching strangers fall apart over heartbreak and ambition. "Every night was a performance," he said. He studied people, their laughter, their sadness, and when he finally stood in front of a camera, all those nights paid off. What emerged wasn't just an actor, it was a survivor who had learned to transform pain into presence. Before the world ever heard his name, Bruce was paying unseen dues. Between double shifts behind the bar, he slipped into off-Broadway theaters, taking whatever parts he could find: a nameless cop, a forgettable friend, a man who existed for 3 lines and vanished. He worked as an extra on sets where no one bothered to learn his name, including a quiet courtroom drama with Paul Newman, where he stood in the background and imagined just for a moment what it would feel like to stand in the center. The pay was small, the hours long, but each tiny role felt like another brick in a life he was building with bare hands. By 1984, with New York wrung dry, he packed his few belongings and drove to Los Angeles, trading snow for sun, but keeping the same hunger. There, bit parts on shows like Miami Vice and The Twilight Zone offered him something he'd never had before: a fragile foothold on the cliff of possibility. But the man who turned hardship into charm was about to meet a role that would make him a global icon and change the definition of what it meant to be a hero. The day Bruce became a legend. It happened in 1985. A single audition that would rewrite television history. Bruce Willis, scruffy, unpredictable, oozing charisma, walked into a casting room already filled with thousands of polished hopefuls. Producers had been searching for months. Then he spoke, and the air changed. They found their man. The show was moonlighting. The world found Bruce Willis. The series exploded. Viewers were obsessed with his swagger, his quick wit, the way he could make charm look like rebellion. Critics called him the everyman with edge. Within a year, Bruce wasn't just a TV star, he was a phenomenon. Seagrams even paid him $7 million to promote their products, a figure almost unheard of for a young actor at the time. But television was only the beginning. In 1988, 20th Century Fox handed him a script that would alter Hollywood forever, Die Hard. At first, everyone laughed. A comedian playing an action hero? Unthinkable. Yet Bruce, with that half-smile and quiet confidence, said yes. The result was lightning in a bottle. As John McClane, he wasn't invincible. He bled, limped, and cursed through pain. He made vulnerability heroic. Die Hard grossed $140 million worldwide, catapulting Bruce to superstardom. For the sequel, he earned $7.5 million. By the third film, $15 million. By the fourth, $25 million. His total from the franchise exceeded $70 million before inflation. Hollywood had found its new icon. He wasn't the muscle-bound savior of the 80s, he was the human one. A man who got hurt and kept going. Audiences loved him for it. But with every success came exhaustion. Endless filming, press tours, and expectations that no human could sustain. Fame, he once said, feels like being the only person in a room full of mirrors. The reflection is constant, the peace fleeting. There was a moment, just after moonlighting erupted into a cultural phenomenon, when Bruce realized the ground beneath him had shifted forever. He could no longer walk into a diner without whispers following him to the booth. Paparazzi camped outside his apartment. Executives who once ignored him now tripped over themselves to offer scripts. Even the way people looked at him had changed, as if fame had placed a thin, invisible wall between him and the rest of the world. He tried to stay grounded, still bartending on occasion just to feel normal, to hear the clatter of glasses and the hum of conversations untouched by Hollywood expectation. But each new offer pulled him deeper into the machine. Filming days stretched into nights. Magazine covers demanded more smiles, more charm, more Bruce. He had become the man studios banked millions on, the man audiences trusted to carry a story on his shoulders. And though the world saw confidence, inside he felt the weight of a life accelerating faster than he could catch his breath. Yet, for all his fame and fortune, Bruce's greatest fortune wasn't in gold, it was in love. Until Hollywood reminded him how fragile even love could be. The golden couple, then silence. In 1987, Bruce Willis married Demi Moore, and for a moment, Hollywood believed in fairy tales again. They were dazzling, magnetic, unstoppable. Together they built a family filled with laughter, chaos, and 3 daughters, Rumor, Scout, and Tallulah. Bruce called being a father the best role I ever had. When he wasn't filming, he'd throw himself on the floor, letting his girls climb over him like a jungle gym. To them, he wasn't a superstar. He was just Dad. The world envied them, a power couple balancing fame and family. But behind the smiles, time began to chip away at their foundation. Both careers exploded. Bruce was filming across continents. Demi's stardom soared. Days apart turned to weeks, then months. The rhythm of Hollywood began to erode what love had built. In 2000, after 13 years of marriage, they announced their divorce. No drama, no scandal, just heartbreak. Bruce later said, "The silence after I left was louder than any explosion I ever filmed." Yet their story didn't end there. They did something rare in Hollywood. They stayed friends. They co-parented, celebrated holidays together, and supported each other through new marriages and heartbreaks. Bruce even attended Demi's wedding to Ashton Kutcher. "She's the mother of my children," he said simply. That doesn't end. Financially, the split was monumental. Reports suggest Demi received around $90 million in settlements and assets, but Bruce never complained. "Money comes and goes," he said. "What matters is what stays." And what stayed was love. Reshaped, but unbroken. There were nights, long after the cameras stopped flashing, when Bruce would sit alone in a quiet corner of their home and wonder when the distance had first begun. Was it during one of his months-long shoots, when he'd return to find the girls taller, braver, older? Or during Demi's soaring success, when she became one of the highest-paid actresses in Hollywood and their schedules overlapped like two ships passing in opposite directions? Neither of them meant to drift. Life simply pulled harder than love could anchor. Still, in the early years, they fought for each other with everything they had. They wrote letters from opposite sides of the world, recorded messages on hotel phones, carved out weekends in between productions, even if it meant taking red-eye flights and sleeping only 3 hours. For a while, it worked. Their home was filled with birthday cakes, homemade costumes, and the kind of laughter that made neighbors pause outside the window just to listen. But even the strongest bonds can stretch thin, and little by little, they felt the weight of a life lived in the spotlight, pressing inward, asking more of them than either could give. But the man who had mastered fame, family, and forgiveness was about to face a fight no amount of money, strength, or courage could win. The quiet decline. For decades, Bruce Willis was indestructible, or so it seemed. Then, the cracks began to show. On film sets, crew members noticed him stumbling over lines he once devoured effortlessly. He'd forget cues, pause mid-scene, or stare blankly as if searching for words that had vanished. At first, people whispered it was exhaustion. Then concern grew. By 2020, his roles shifted to smaller, quieter films, low-budget projects that puzzled fans. Why would a global superstar take such minor parts? Behind the scenes, the answer was heartbreaking. He was struggling with aphasia, a condition that affects communication and comprehension. Directors began feeding him lines through earpieces. Castmates gently guided him through scenes. He wanted to keep working, to keep feeling alive. But the disease was relentless. In 2022, his family made it public. Bruce Willis was retiring from acting. The statement, signed by all 5 of his daughters and his wife Emma Hemming Willis, broke millions of hearts. Then, in early 2023, came the crueler truth. His aphasia had progressed to frontotemporal dementia. a rare and irreversible condition that steals not just memory, but personality. His wife described those days as free falling into darkness. Yet she refused to crumble. Together with Demi Moore, Emma formed a united front, caring for Bruce with quiet devotion. "He's still here," she said softly. "He's just different now." There are still moments, fleeting, precious, when his old spark flickers. A grin, a hum, a hand squeeze that says what words cannot. There were signs long before the diagnosis, small moments that slipped quietly into the background of his life. Sometimes he would pause in the middle of a sentence, searching for a word he once used effortlessly. Other times, he'd walk into a room and stop, unsure why he had gone there. On set, longtime crew members exchanged worried glances when he'd ask the same question twice, or look to them for reassurance before delivering a line. At home, his daughters noticed he grew quieter at family gatherings, listening more, speaking less, as though words were becoming heavier to lift. Emma tried to make sense of it, telling herself it was just exhaustion from decades of non-stop work. But late at night, when the house was still and she watched him sitting on the edge of the bed, shoulders slightly slumped, she felt a fear she couldn't name. He was still Bruce, still warm, still gentle, still there. But something subtle was shifting, something she could feel even when she couldn't explain it. And in those moments, amid the fading light, his family discovered something deeper than fame, the real fortune Bruce left behind. The empire he built. Bruce Willis's career wasn't just cinematic, it was financial history. Over 40 years, he amassed an estimated $250 million net worth. From Die Hard alone, he earned more than $70 million. His role in The Sixth Sense made him over $100 million, including a rare profit-sharing deal, the largest single-actor payday in Hollywood history. He bought homes not for show, but for solace. A $20 million Beverly Hills estate, a peaceful Idaho lake house where he said, "This is where I can breathe." A 7-acre Turks and Caicos compound with white stone villas and turquoise waters, later sold for $27 million. He owned New York penthouses, Montana ranches, and a home in Brentwood worth nearly $10 million. His car collection mirrored his taste, classic, not flashy. A Porsche 911, a vintage Corvette, and a Cadillac Escalade that carried him across film sets. But his wealth wasn't just in possessions. Bruce quietly donated millions to veterans, children's hospitals, and first responders, the same kind of heroes he once portrayed. No press releases, no spotlights. "You give because you can," he once said, "not because you're seen." Today, those assets are protected under family trusts managed by Emma Hemming Willis and his children. The fortune remains, but the meaning has changed. His family no longer sees it as money, but as a monument to the decades he spent building something lasting out of nothing. There was a rhythm to the way Bruce built his fortune, a discipline learned from years of scraping by in New York apartments where the heat barely worked and rent felt like an enemy. Every dollar he earned after fame hit was treated with intention. He invested in real estate long before it became fashionable, choosing places that offered him quiet over glamour. Friends often said he bought homes the way other people bought memories, each one tied to a chapter of his life, a place where he could retreat from the noise he never asked for. He also built businesses quietly, partnering in restaurants, music ventures, and small production companies that kept his creative world expanding even when cameras weren't rolling. Those who worked with him often spoke of his generosity, how he'd cover a crew member's medical bill without mentioning it again, or quietly fund a community project back in New Jersey. Money, to him, wasn't a throne. It was a tool, a way to make life gentler for the people he cared about. And through it all, he never flaunted a single achievement. And that brings us to the heart of it all. The legacy that money could never buy. The fortune that made them cry. The numbers are staggering. The homes are breathtaking. But when Bruce's family gathered recently at his Idaho retreat, surrounded by still water and snow-dusted trees, they didn't cry over money. They cried over memory. His daughters now walk him through the garden, guiding him by the hand. Sometimes he stops, staring at the sunlight through the trees. He may not say their names, but he still smiles, faint but real. "He doesn't need to talk," said his daughter Rumor. "We can feel it. He's still Dad." For a man who once defined Hollywood toughness, his final act is not about action. It's about grace. His wealth, estimated at $250 million, now exists as a cushion for the people he loved most. But its true value isn't in estates or royalties. It's in the security he built to protect them long after his voice fades. Emma often says, his fortune isn't what he leaves behind. It's who he leaves behind. Their blended family, Demi, Emma, and 5 daughters, remains united in a love story that defies Hollywood's cynicism. Together, they preserve his legacy, ensuring every cent, every home, every investment carries the same purpose it always did: to care for them. His fortune made them cry because it's more than wealth. It's proof of a lifetime spent working, sacrificing, and giving everything, even when his body began to fail. Bruce Willis once played heroes who saved the world, but in the end, his truest act of heroism was saving his family's future, giving them peace in a world that once demanded all his strength. There are moments, quiet and almost invisible, that reveal the true weight of what he built. Sometimes it happens when one of his daughters opens a drawer in the Idaho house and finds an old photo of Bruce holding them as babies, his eyes bright with the kind of joy no camera could ever really capture. Other times, it happens when Emma sits beside him on the porch and watches him gaze out at the lake, the same lake he once chose because he wanted his family to have a place untouched by noise or pressure. They remember how many years he worked without rest, how often he came home from grueling shoots with bruises hidden under his shirt, how he pushed through exhaustion because providing for them mattered more than sleep, more than comfort, more than anything fame could offer. And now, standing in the quiet he created for them, they feel that history in every beam of the house, every tree he planted, every detail he cared about. His fortune is not just measured in millions. It's measured in the love that built it, piece by piece, year after year. Bruce Willis didn't just leave behind a $250 million empire. He left behind a lesson that courage isn't about the fight scenes or the fame. It's about rising when life takes everything from you and still finding a way to love. His fortune may sparkle under the California sun, but its true value lies in the hearts of those who still hold his hand, still whisper his name, and still see the hero he always was. If Bruce Willis ever inspired you, honor him with a like, and watch our next story for more untold Hollywood legacies.